Okay, welcome everybody to the Contributor Summit Europe Retro. Just to go over how the Contributor Summit went and everything else, partly for our benefit and partly for the benefit of the next Contributor Summit team. Everybody already should have up the retro document. Let me paste that again for anybody to join later. And then we're just going to go over it and sort of add things as we go. So let's start out with what went well. One is honestly largely out of necessity. We took kind of a minimum, we took a just-in-time approach to organization of the summit. And actually, except for swag, which we had to kind of write off because you can't do that with a just-in-time approach. It seemed to work out, particularly for a summit for something like this, where we really had no idea when we started planning this whether we were going to be talking about 20 attendees or 120 attendees.
Not to mention like staff commitments too, or most of the staff was just like, we can be there, assuming the world is not on fire.
Yeah, I felt like we had it felt like a good turnout to the summit. Do we actually have a final count of people who checked in, Deb?
I can find out.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there were about 140 people that registered, if I recall correctly.
I thought it was 110, but
that I can tell you quickly, since it's its own reg form.
Yep.
Given that one of the other decisions we made was to basically kind of start the summit day late. And that seemed to really help people. Because the first actual scheduled item we had was at 10 a.m. And that was just the AMA. So I felt like that worked out a lot better to have most of the people there by the time that we started. I thought the social went pretty well. The two things actually that I felt worked out really well at the social were Lockheed's quiz show, which people got really into, and the food, the catering was excellent. I should have known that in Valencia, heavy apps actually means whatever it was, 18 pounds of paella.
124 registered.
Okay.
Did anybody feel like the party was a little short?
Yeah.
That was
one person filling out the form did.
Okay.
I can say that I did hear that from other sentiment as well.
Okay.
Ideally, at least if possible, go for like an hour longer, because a lot of people, we had a lot of latecomers to the social, so they got there and then essentially it was an hour and then out.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, ideally, most of the time, if we're renting a venue, it would potentially be like one of the things that works out well for a smaller one, which will probably not be Detroit, is a venue where after the Contributor Summit ends, they just open up to the public. And therefore, if people want to stay, hang out over drinks, they can. Rather than needing to clear everybody out. So, yeah, I mean, it certainly was for me. I brought board games to the social, but I wasn't going to do the board games until we were done with the quiz, and then it was too late. And that includes transportation. Actually worked out fine. I was really worried about getting people to the social, and it doesn't seem to have been a problem. Having those buses was great, and most of the people took the bus, from what I could tell. And then some people got there on their own. As we chatted before Bob got here, I felt like doing the unconference sessions or the so-called the open spaces, doing it the standard DevOps days way where you pick them the morning of and not at some other time, worked out better in terms of attendance in the actual sessions than our alternative mechanisms that we've used for other contributor summits. Because at least I ducked into 4 sessions and they were all pretty well attended. I didn't see the others.
So just for clarification, that's submitting of the ideas early and then just voting essentially on site?
Yes, doing all the voting on site. We would have taken ideas that morning too. Did we get any ideas that morning, Nigel?
Not really. They didn't start. There were like a couple people who put them in ahead of time. Thanks, Puya. There are a couple people who put them in ahead of time, but for the most part, it wasn't until after I was like, can we please like use this? And then they started coming in some more.
Right. Now I was wondering whether or not we got any that morning, whether or not anybody showed up who hadn't been part of the thread.
Yes. Yeah, there definitely were new additions throughout the day. I think the last several, I think we got 3 or 4 new ones day of.
Okay. So yeah. So some ahead of time, some the day of, and doing the voting on site morning of. It's hard to isolate that from other stuff that we're doing, right? Because there was obviously a lot that was different about San Diego. Or when was the previous one when we had unconference stuff? I guess we've always had some unconference stuff, but you're muted, Bob.
So we had them at Barcelona.
Yeah.
But those were more SIG specific sessions than unconference. And then I think the last one we had like really truly dedicated unconference was 2018 in Seattle.
Okay. Okay, so what else went well out of this one that we should call out?
And the space seemed nice.
Yeah, and also the food. I feel like the food, they did a pretty good job with that. Like I was expecting like snacks, and it was pretty good.
Okay.
I agree with what Puya wrote there in the comments as well. Finding people actively in the week before KubeCon helped kick the GitHub thread off. Nobody likes to be the first one to propose a topic, it seems. Yeah, I definitely did ping the person who put the first one and was like, hey, I know you have an idea. Could you please like put it in there?
Yeah, if you get like, 1 or 2 people ahead of time to sort of seed it, it's a good way to kick things off.
Yeah.
Are we talking about doing an unconference in Detroit?
We will probably have a classic CFP for Detroit, although we might have some dedicated unconference slots. We will see.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a big fan of having at least one room of unconference sessions, just because one of the values of the contributor summit is to discuss things that literally came up 2 weeks before the summit.
Yep.
And you can't do that through a formal CFP.
With the CFP, I feel like it's probably going to be rejects for the unconference, right?
You mean the other way around?
No.
So like the people that submit to the unconference, the people that got rejected from the CFP?
I think so. Yeah, for like if you have like a CFP track for the contributor summit, then I feel like people may just submit that for the unconference.
We generally haven't had too much of a problem, at least with that in the past. Almost outside of some very wildly not on topic things, like pretty much all the CFP submissions were accepted.
Understood.
Okay. Anything else that went well or call out? And yeah, I like the space too. It felt good having. We actually kind of had 2 lobby areas and then the rooms off of those. And it felt like it worked well for the movement of people. To the extent that we can get it having a big space and then having the breakout rooms come off of the big space, seems to be a good way to set these up, if such an arrangement is possible. Okay. So things that did not go well. I'll go through what we have over here. Meet and greet room was too small. You know, things we didn't know before we showed up there. And part of, and one of the things contributing to problems with the meet and greet was that we did not get a volunteer for a meet and greet coordinator. And so I was basically filling in with meet and greet organization to the extent that I could around other things, and the meet and greet definitely suffered for it. Okay, we had several complaints from people. Chris calls us out. Several complaints from people having difficulty finding the contributor summit. Like I said, this feels like an unavoidable problem. Because like I actually felt like the signage and stuff for the contributor summit was pretty good. The problem was the contributor summit is always the first thing that people attend in the week.
Yep.
And as a result, they're figuring out the entire venue when they show up.
The thing that seemed to help with that was honestly just tweeting a picture of the since it was a complete separate building, was tweeting a picture of the separate building. Like my guess is for North America, we're all in Cobo, right? Or Huntington, TCF, now Huntington Place.
Yes. Yeah. However, that does give me an idea, which is we usually do a walkthrough like on Sunday afternoon.
We did do a walkthrough on
well, so what about both tweeting photos and maybe a TikTok video that Sunday of, hey, here's how you get to the contributor summit starting from the entrance of the conference hall.
That we can probably do.
We have a Kate's TikTok?
No, and I will die on the hill. There will be no Kate's TikTok. We
Okay.
have enough.
Would it be worthwhile to potentially add signage at registration itself, or do you think that would bring in too many people who said, oh, that sounds interesting, and haven't actually signed up?
But we did have signage at registration.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like people who were registering that day, you know, they were probably coming to the summit because it was like, what, 2 days before keynotes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know what else we can do to reduce the amount of confusion. I think we're just going to have to take it as given that, you know, a certain 10-20% of people are going to spend a lot of time wandering around trying to find it.
I will say that it did not help too that the room, like the room numbers and all that were named similarly. So like there was a bunch of people wandering around the main building, which you would assume is, it was called like Event Center or something like that. The one that we were in was called like Event Center. It just, I think there was a lot of things that lent itself to confusion at that location.
Yeah. I mean, this is a problem we're going to have though, right? Because Barcelona, we had the problem that because of them funneling us all through the same entrance, the contributor summit was actually literally 1.5 kilometers from registration. No matter what we try to do, we can't really control the venue.
Yeah, we'll do what we can. We've had maps, we've tweeted out stuff.
Yeah, I think that short of like if we just create a volunteer role where somebody is just going back and forth from like Reg or from wherever people are showing up to like just walk back and forth and like have a few people trade off during the day to, you know, take small groups in.
The big problem is just like this wasn't so much an issue for Valencia, where we had a smaller amount of people and we all kind of knew each other who was going to be there.
Yeah,
For North America, assume we're going to have 300 people and a lot of people that have never met other people before.
sure.
Yeah.
But like a big old sign.
Yeah, like yeah.
Follow me to the contributor summit, you know.
I wouldn't want to do that all day, but I could see somebody doing that in the morning.
Well, yeah.
Battery in my
The,
headset died.
Okay. So definitely something to work on for Detroit, whatever,
There we go.
in Amsterdam. We have no idea what Amsterdam's going to look like. One of the problems we had was that multiple contributors didn't seem to realize that you had to register for the contributor summit to go to the social. And we even had one of them complain about that in the survey. I don't know what we can do to change that because we're not going to change the requirements.
Yeah.
I mean, we did end up letting people in, you know, and we had somebody stationed at the front desk to verify that somebody was a contributor. But I'm not sure how we can message better that even if you're not going during the day, you need to register to attend the social.
We honestly, there's not much more we can do. We've had this problem every single time. Like there's at least one or two people that just don't bother with registering, don't bother doing anything like that at all. It's just going to be a given that there will be at least a couple of people that don't.
Yeah. That was, I would say, actually the one issue that the location created for the social, which is when we had people who were not registered show up at the social. I felt a lot of pressure to sort of lower the threshold for they are a contributor because they'd come out a distance from the conference hall, and if they were not allowed to attend, they kind of killed their other evening activities. Although not really in Valencia, but they'd missed something else. You know, and that definitely played into the deciding whether or not somebody ought to be able to go in, because we actually let in a couple of people who were substantial contributors to other CNCF projects, but not to Kubernetes, just because we didn't want to send them back.
That has also happened before where they just assume, like, I know at least two people that basically got I don't want to say like denied entry to the summit because they were not actual contributors to Kubernetes, just kind of showed up later.
Yeah. Yeah, like in this case, I think it was actually genuine confusion, as in they actually believed that it was more CNCF contributor and not necessarily Kubernetes specifically.
So
and then
out of
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Out of band potentially working on something like that for the broader level.
Yeah. The okay. One of the things I remarked earlier is I didn't prep the post CS survey and email in time, so it went out 2 weeks after the event. And that's probably contributed to only getting 15 responses in the survey. You know, it's too many things to do.
Are we like if we have if this is the one that we're going to use for next time, do we want to just have it available on a QR code, like when folks are leaving the summit?
Yeah, that would actually be great because we might get a few more responses that way. So
you know, have the link in closing ceremonies or something.
Yeah, I guess it won't capture the party aspect of it.
Well, but people can always fill it out later, and people can even fill it out twice. Most people give their names, so we know about duplicates.
All right.
Okay. Anything else that didn't go well? Okay, moving on to things to change for next time. Forgot to create the retro doc until after the summit, which was also just the whole follow-up thing. For people who are joining us who were not part of the summit, they're joining us because they're going to do Detroit. Just so you know, we had a really small team for the summit. I think there were like 5 of us. So a lot of things got kind of dropped because we had more tasks than people. So just create the retro doc, honestly, well before the actual summit, because things come up during the planning stage that you want to remember. One of the requests we had from comms, which I can represent for them, is define the sort of schedule of emails and tweets and messaging.
So we do
emails
actually...
and tweets and messaging to go out much earlier, like you know, like a month, 2 months before the summit if possible, because we generally actually kind of know most of the messaging we're going to have to do and when we're going to have to do that. And if we didn't know before this summit, it's all like annotated now. So a recommendation to the Detroit team is take the sort of marked up version of our messaging docs from this and use that as a basis to decide well in advance what's going to need to go out for the summit. Because particularly for things like if Deb is sending stuff out to the attendees using their system, apparently there's some prep that goes into that. And so it's not something that they can do well in advance. And even for Kubernetes comms, they often have a bunch of messages that they need to send out around the conference. And as a result, they need to space everything out.
So we do have a comms playbook and a general like schedule that we try and follow. It's just that honestly, it always wound up being the thing that got bumped off the list of people's tasks. And we could use more people that help with that. The other thing is like on the Twitter side of things, there is a request open in Kubernetes steering to help with all the scheduling of the tweets that will help with scheduling all that stuff, so you can have a more uniform, you know, messaging front, I guess is a way to put it. Like right now, it's all for every tweet, it's either Caslin or Chris going in and doing it by hand, or a whole slew of issues that they then have to time the LGTM approve or, you know, hold cancel to get the timing right. So there is some stuff that should help with that for Detroit.
Yeah. I'm actually going to message, I'm going to go back up to something that went well because it just occurred to me related to messaging, which is this is the first contributor summit where we've really had full access to the contributor site, and being able to constantly update that site was actually quite useful. We were able to put a lot more information about this contributor summit on that site than we had been able to reasonably put up in the past. And I felt that really made a difference for some things like, for example, transportation to the social. Having all that up on the site really made a difference for that.
Plus 100 for Kates.dev being the place for
yes.
all the things.
Yep. We needed to really decide on the whole +1s issue for the social earlier than we did. We put it off because we didn't know what attendance was going to be like, and we put it off a little bit too long. So as a result, there wasn't really enough time for the whole feedback loop. So some people who would have liked to bring their +1s didn't because they didn't get the message in time. And other, you know, we didn't so much have the other way around. We didn't have people bringing +1s who hadn't registered, as far as I know. But we just needed to do that at least 2 weeks, like maybe 2.5 weeks before the social, rather than the 8 days before the social, which is what we actually did. And then we have a long comment from Rob, who couldn't attend and who I understand is going to be volunteering to help with the meet and greet for Detroit. You know, suggesting the meet and greet should be a little bit longer, and a little bit more structured, etc. And so these will all be things for Rob to implement if he's able to follow through in working on the Detroit team.
Quick thing, do you know which Rob?
Kilty.
Okay.
Yeah. So the any other things that we should any other bits of advice and experience to pass to the Detroit and/or Amsterdam teams based on our experience here?
Start sooner than you think.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, this one was really a balancing act between, we wanted to do things in a timely fashion and have better lead times, but on the other hand, we didn't want to plan things when we didn't have enough information to plan them, which was a lot of this particular contributor summit. You know, just because the contributor summit LA had been kind of a non-event with, I don't know, 25 to 30 people showing up, and we really did not know what Valencia was going to be like. I think you have better, I think you can have better, more realistic expectations about Detroit.
Yeah, I'm honestly banking on probably around at least 300 for Detroit.
Okay. Some other stuff from the survey. We brought contributor patches with us to give out, and we forgot to announce it. And so people who should have gotten patches did not get theirs. Actually, this comes down to a piece of advice: is have a running checklist of what announcements. So we didn't create a checklist of the announcements that Pooja needed to make at the beginning of the summit, et cetera. Yeah. And as a result, forgot about some things like the patches.
I don't think we usually do a know before you go deck that's for staff. Mm-hmm. I don't think we wound up putting one together this time. And that's where we wind up having a lot of that other additional information.
Yeah. Yep. One
also
person.
That was also not like 100% on you either. Like don't kick yourself for that.
Yeah. Well, no, the other thing is with the know before you go deck is we prepared a know before you go for the attendees, but we didn't really think about doing it for staff because there were so few staff. But of course, we forgot to remind ourselves of things as a result. The deck is actually more valuable from the writing of it than it is from the actual, using of it. Yeah, so whether it's a deck or something else, we need to do a know before you go for staff, just so we remember all the things we need to remember. One person objected to needing to register for the social. I don't think there's really anything we can do about that. I'm going to pass this along. 3 people volunteered to help with Detroit and 4 to help with Amsterdam. So I will pass along those emails in case you don't already know about those people. Beyond that, people can see the survey. Like I said, it's small numbers, it's 15 responses, so I don't feel like it was representative, because we're talking about probably in the order of 15 to 18% of the people who are actually there. And when you have a minority response, you tend to get the people who both were really enthusiastic about it and the people who had something to complain about and nobody else. As usual, more people came to the social than anything else. People felt good about the contributor summit. I was curious about communication just because that had been a difficult thing in terms of the amount of effort for us. And despite some of the complaints about having difficulty finding things, mostly people just said that they found out some things at the last minute. But nobody said that they missed things entirely because they couldn't find information. One person really did not like the format. So, I mean, our format was basically SIG meetings, unconference sessions, and the steering AMA, and that was it. And most people liked that format. A couple of people liked that format more than other contributor summits they've been to. One person did not like that format. Suggestions for people wanting to change things, and this is where this really comes in for Detroit and Amsterdam here. The one overwhelming thing is that people really wanted contributor workshops of some kind.
Well, specifically for people that are contributors already, not the new contributor workshop type thing.
People also want something for new contributors, but that's separate.
Yeah. In terms of responses, that's only 13%.
Yeah. I mean, mind you, consider who we're surveying.
It's 15.
So and so the other two ones that got a lot of responses, again, a third of the people each, is more planned sessions alongside the unconference sessions.
Yep.
And more rooms and time slots for SIG meetings. Those I find interesting because we didn't turn down, the only SIG meeting we turned down, we turned them down after they said that nobody had committed to attending. Like the person who suggested that meeting was going to be unable to make it and no one else committed to attending. And that's the only one we canceled.
My guess is at that point, it's just an optics thing. Like they didn't realize that,
that they had to sign up.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can't do SIG meetings without people signing up in advance because
we have to be
otherwise, if we do it the day of, we'll end up with a SIG meeting that only has one person.
Yep. All
like the social,
like, not bad considering so the session and content wise. Again, we kind of went into it with no this is kind of the expected response. Yeah.
Part of it, honestly, the format was largely our format from Shanghai because Pooja and I did Shanghai, and we went into Shanghai with no expectations, right? Because we'd never been in China before. So we tried to keep it as fluid as possible, and it kind of worked out. So that was kind of the approach that we took to this one. But it does mean that some of the things, some things that maybe should have happened during this contributor summit, like the structured log stuff, did not end up happening. So other comments? Somebody liked the bingo card as usual. One of the things the other thing that we were trying to accept with the summit is the idea that half the people are at the summit just to talk to other people and not to attend any meetings or sessions at all. And I think we shouldn't fight that. We should just embrace it.
I mean, I think that's fine, but like the hallways are pretty cavernous. And so like folks having conversations out there during sessions was really distracting, and like we couldn't really close the doors on every one of them. So like, I think that if that's the case for next time, maybe we have like an area that's for that, or we just have like, quiet zone when like a talk is happening, because a couple times I was ushering folks out of that main hallway in front of the auditorium so that folks inside could hear.
When we were having problems, were the doors open or were they closed?
They were some combination because there were two sets of doors.
Okay.
But we tried to close them, but then folks had difficulty getting in or whatever. It was a little bit of a mess.
Okay.
Okay, so I put that under things that did not go well. So your suggestion, Nigel, would be actually the big central room with breakout rooms leading off of it is maybe not a great layout, because of the amount of noise from people talking.
I mean, I think it just depends on the venue, right? Like
Yeah.
sometimes it'll be okay, but sometimes it won't.
That is a little difficult to plan for.
Right.
I mean, yeah. Given
So
that
that's like a
how little
walkthrough
we know.
thing. Like if we can like just make it so, or just like let people know once we do the walkthroughs, like, okay, hey, we should like move the people to a particular area. Yeah, Puya's right there. Is the main issue was the hallway noise being very transparent towards the main room. And yeah, if we had it out in the stair room, then that would probably be
Okay.
fine.
So that like just try and being aware of that, and having the food in that right outside that main door also did not help.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
In that vein, I feel like it would be really helpful to be able to do much earlier walkthroughs. Like I know we did that in San Diego. Who is still in the Detroit area that could potentially do a walkthrough for us once we know what rooms we have available?
George.
Okay.
Chris Short will also be there. I know a bunch of people in local. Don't worry.
Awesome.
I've also put on multiple events in this convention center. So
very, very good.
Okay, the rest of that comment was people liking individual sessions, which I actually feel is a really good spread for only 15 responses. Was that like everybody's session had somebody that liked it, which says to me that we had the right content. Things we should change. Somebody actually had an interesting suggestion, which was to try a format where you do lightning talks followed by breakouts.
Joe?
And obviously that'll be more interesting if that person volunteers for either the upcoming Contributor Summit teams. Somebody wants to see more focus on meeting with other contributors, and maybe some kind of Hackfest type thing. One of those more advertising towards SIG projects with regard to getting a slot for SIG project meeting, allow project meetings aren't part of a SIG. So what's interesting about that is we did a Slack blast to all of the SIGs. It was on KDev. It was in LWKD twice. It was on the contributor site.
it was in Slack.
It was in Slack. And yet it shows that sometimes you just can't get the message out no matter how hard you try, because when we put the message out, we said these are called SIG meetings, but any standing Kubernetes team can apply for these. Because one of the ones we specifically had was a team. It wasn't even a sub project. So one of the calls that we had, and I've seen this on Slack too, is that there are people who are wanting to spread out the Contributor Summit over 2 days. And I think we'll continue to hear that.
Yep.
Until we try it, at which point we'll get a bunch of people telling us we should go back to 1 day.
And I think the big problem is now that the KubeCon co-located events are now across 2 days. Like we used to have our summit before the rest of the day 0 events. So it's kind of nice. So like a lot of the people that attend have to go help run their vendor specific events. And that is no longer the case. It's kind of a crapshoot whether you're going to be doing like your vendor or your employer, whatever you're associated with, is doing something on Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, the problem is that realistically we can't really move the Contributor Summit to Sunday.
Yeah, no, it's I wouldn't.
It would be a killer for a lot of people.
Yep.
I mean, I would say if a team wanted to take the plunge and stretch it out over 2 days, then the answer would be Sunday, Monday. But the problem with the 2-day thing is that effectively you'd be getting 2 different audiences on one on each day. A relative hand, a minority of people would attend both days, but mostly it would be people dropping in for one day or the other.
Yeah. The other thing would potentially be doing, like, we did this, I think we've actually offered this several times, is so SIGs, if they want to do a meeting or if they want to schedule something specific, they can do it. They can take a slot on the following day, essentially. I think we've offered that a few times in the past. Am I right, Deb?
Yes, we've offered some meeting rooms to SIGs if they needed them.
Yeah. So that would be a possibility, is to and to maybe even officially schedule that as part of the contributor summit so that more SIGs know about it. And that would work together with one of the things we discussed about doing for Tuesday is doing like an hour and a half new contributor orientation type thing. So if we just had a room on Tuesday, it could be used for that plus a series of SIG meetings.
So something else regarding our comms and messaging and all that is that we've usually sent the same message to both dev and leads list. We might want to have a separate set of messaging basically tailored for, I think just like KubeCon and the maintainer track sessions. If you want to reserve a space, send an independent comms message to the leads list.
Yeah.
For Detroit, as of right now, you've got Monday, you have your hangout room with meals, your docs room, and then 2 meeting rooms, the general sessions room and a workshop room. So you have those 2 right there. And then on Tuesday, we saved you 2 meeting rooms as well.
Okay, so we do have the space.
Yeah.
Okay. The one other comment I'll say for out of the logistical problems here, and this is basically a note for Deb, which is just a thing to remind / ask the caterer to have description / ingredient lists with the food if possible.
I saw that comment for the reception one. It was on all the tables, so I'm not sure where they looked.
There were a lot of past appetizers.
Yeah.
And the past appetizers did not have names, and actually most but not all items in the tables had names.
No, but they had the menu on it. So yeah, labeling maybe the names, but if you asked, they told you what it was.
Yeah, I think it's possible the person asking this was actually standing and chatting and never necessarily went near the tables.
Looked at that, because all of them had every item we were doing. I was impressed by their thing, because they flagged for dietary things that we didn't even require. So
okay, yeah.
I think that there was definitely, like, the staff who was serving food was pretty stretched thin, because there were a lot of times where folks were trying to get their attention. I remember one time we ran out of spoons or something, and they were like running around trying to get silverware or like flatware, and it was difficulty nailing them down. And I did hear some complaints that there weren't enough vegan options.
Are you talking about during the day or at the reception?
During the day, sorry, during the day.
Okay, that one I will agree with. That we had some issues with the catering company. I will agree that they did not perform well during the day, but everything was labeled there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, the one thing I could see actually doing about with the social is if we have a situation like this, because it's probably going to be always true that past apps are not well labeled, that we should announce where the information on ingredients is out loud at the beginning of the social. And that'll help people. So
we used to also put the menu in Sketch, if I remember correctly. We may consider doing that again, because you can flag things in there too. I'm not sure if people would actually look in Sketch, but
Okay.
Probably
least
if we list it on Keats.dev on the event site.
Set the menus and schedule or put it directly on that website.
I also, it's not, we probably put it in both. It's
Okay.
not too difficult if it's just like a link.
Okay. So we're past time here. So do we have anything to add to action items for this? So it's a little different than usual just because we're having this, whatever it is, 3 weeks, 4 weeks after the contributor summit. So most follow-up items are kind of done.
No.
Um,
Actually, one AI that we need to do is archive the KubeCon EU event site.
okay, well, that sounds like a me.
We should honestly, I kind of want to restructure the entire event portion of the site because like everything has to be moved. All the links have to change every single time we archive it. It'd be a lot easier if we just do it by year anyway and make it easy on ourselves.
That's a big thumbs up on making it easy on ourselves.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. One of the other things I would say is, is that one of the things we discovered with the comms schedule that I was going to mention earlier is that we had a bunch of comms stuff left over from like San Diego, but it was not comprehensive. It only covered half, 40% of the messages we actually needed to send out. We added all of that stuff to various documents, but there are multiple documents. And so I think it would really be helpful if some of us work together with the Detroit, whoever's going to do comms for the Detroit team, and tried to create a comprehensive schedule.
Okay. I actually have to jump to another meeting.
Okay.
I think that's all of the various things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Final thoughts, Pooja, since this is you signing off?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My voice is still not completely back. Sorry for that.
Yeah.
I was active in chat. Yeah, I mean, in total, I think for the limited amount of time and limited amount of organizers, this went extremely well, and we can take a lot of experience with us into the next one and bring the next team a bit of certainty in planning. Now that this one actually got a lot of attendees.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it went well. Like, I feel like people had meetings, people did sessions, they discussed stuff that was important to Kubernetes development. And that is, after all, what the Contributor Summit is for.
Yep.
And if there was a major problem with the Contributor Summit, it was the one we can't control, which is obviously a lot of key people couldn't be there because of travel restrictions. Okay. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Another good Contributor Summit, and good luck to the Detroit team.
Yeah.
I'm going to attempt to not personally be responsible for anything in this Contributor Summit. We'll see how that goes.
I have voluntold Jeff and George.
Yeah.
So
but you know, if the Detroit team needs to ask questions of members of the team who are not cycling again, you know, do it in Summit staff. Cool.
Okay.
Well, thanks.
Later.
Thanks, everyone.